So let's get into the guts of it. Let's start thinking about how we'd write it or produce it. Now, because most of you are doing written, I'm talking as if it's written. Many of you who do a video will still produce some sort of script document. However, when I'm saying things like 3 to 4 sentences, that means written or oral. Your introduction has a very specific purpose, and this doesn't matter what type of document you're doing. You're going to be trying to get your moderator and your marker very clearly into your head. We need to know, what was your research question? What was the topic? What was the final thing you answered? Not the one you started out with in your proposal that changed 17 times. The final one that you addressed in your paper. You then also need to think about what research you did. This is your chance to show off. Make yourself look really good. You guys have done lots of hard work. Make sure you show it. So what'd you do to collect the evidence? Then your thesis statement. So this is just like any paper that you've ever written for English or history or social or science or anything. It is, presenting. I'm going to be talking about this stuff. Don't say it like that. But that's essentially what it does. Gives your reader a bit of an introduction. So here is an example of a summary table that you might use to get to this point, because there's a very clear process in this outcome writing. You do your research. You annotate your research so that you can prove that you've read it, you've understood it. You then take that information that's in your annotations. You should probably not have to actually read your source ever again, because you've already pulled out the key ideas. You get that information and you essentially cut and paste into your summary table. Okay? Now, does it have to be a table? No. Could it be a list? Yes. Diagram? Fantastic. Whatever it is that allows you to plan. Okay? Poorly planned outcome is so clearly poorly planned. So when I do this, and I do this because I am doing research, I'm still killing myself doing the exact same things that you guys are doing in my research project at uni. I get my focus question for the chapter that I'm writing, and I write it down, and then I get all my evidence and I put it in the third column. And I cut and paste, whatever. Got 20 sources or whatever it is. And I look at them and I go, right, what is my answer? And I write that completely in my own words. I just blah, 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 blah. Okay, get a nice answer. And then I go to the final column and I go, okay, where is the supporting evidence for my evidence? Okay, because I reckon I've got an answer. I reckon I can prove it. I got to make sure that my sources actually work. Okay, so that might look like my focus question is the sky blue? My answer to the question, well, generally, yes. The evidence, I have a photo of the sky and it is blue. My evidence that supports this, my interview with Mr. Bartram, who said yes, the sky tends to be blue. Although I bet he probably now goes and tells me it's not actually blue and it's probably just some reflection of ozone particles or something. Anyway, so it's meant to be simple. It is not meant to be extra work. It is a really good folio page. It is not meant to be death. It is meant to be you planning and bringing it together. I've told my class this a couple of times, but the summary table is important. Really important. If you do it well, we should be able to pick up your summary table or your plan of your outcome, and we should be able to send that to the SACE board in lieu of your outcome. So let's imagine that there is a zombie apocalypse, okay, just before you write your outcome. Because the SACE board are obviously hell-born heathens, they are not affected by the zombie apocalypse, and they obviously still want to mark your outcome. Okay? They cannot get your outcome because you've been affected by the zombie plague. We can give them the summary table, okay, because you have answered your question, given us the evidence and shown the supporting evidence in there. You've also labelled where that evidence has come from, which is kind of like referencing. So a good summary table is basically your outcome. It's a bit of double dipping as well, because if you were to put this page in your folio to show you planned your outcome, you have a plan for your outcome, which helps write your outcome, but you also have a page for your folio, which you can get marked on. So you kind of get 2 points for one activity, which in my book is really useful. Depends though, if you like doing extra work. So let's go through some tips and tricks just to finish off. It must be organized, it must be clear, it must be concise. Do not waffle, right? This is meant to be super short, sharp, and shiny, like one page, okay? You're able to do all the work for your outcome in your summary table, so this will take a little while, particularly once you got to get started. Make sure that you work your way through your quotes and your ideas that you put in your annotations. The idea of annotating is not because we are evil, horrible people and think it's fun to watch you struggle. The idea of annotating is that it engages you in your source, and you have actually already done all the hard work for the outcome then, because you've summarized it in your own words and you've got the key quotes. Bada bing, bada boom, copy it over. Okay. If the idea of putting this all in a table is completely horrible and you don't want to do it, that's totally fine. However you plan it is your call. Just like the rest of this project, how you do it is your call. We are offering only suggestions. If you have a better one, please email it to me because I'd love to see it. Okay? Share it around. We need to work together on this. Now, one thing that often happens as you do your summary table is you start to go focus question 1, yep, go and answer, evidence, yep, cool. Focus question 2, oh my God, I have nothing. Maybe it just got forgotten, maybe your focus question wasn't very good, maybe it's not necessary. But if you think that you need to actually answer this focus question for your outcome, you're going to need to go do some more evidence. Okay? So that requires research. Usually at this stage, you guys are so much on tenterhooks anyway that if I said go annotate those 12 new sources you just got, you'd probably inflict some sort of pain upon me. So my advice, and you're going to need to double check this with your teachers, do not take my advice except for some things. You need to make sure that it is in your folio and it is addressed in some way. So you might just do like a cutesy little commentary that like we did it for the second assignment in year 11. Or maybe you might do an annotated bibliography, which is where you just chuck the bibliographic details, summarize it really briefly. You might have like 20 sources on one page. That's totally fine too. I wouldn't worry about annotating it. I would just show that you've engaged with it. We need to have an engagement. You might write a little journal about it even. But most importantly, it's in your folio. We can see where it is. Okay? All your sources go in your bibliography. Remember, that includes everything you read. So even if you read something and you don't end up using it, put it in because you've still included that in your research project. You have said, nope, that was bad. I'm not doing that. So you might find that once you go to do the outcome, you actually are doing more writing and reading. But we'll see how we go. Now, this is more for you guys at the end when you've written your outcome. And you want to check, how am I going to do the best possible job that I could possibly ever do? So this stuff, because I'm a good researcher and I reference my sources, I didn't write this. This is from the Chief Assessor's report. This is from like the boss of research project. They write it at the end of the year. They get all the moderators to give their feedback and they look at all the work and they say, right, what did we see the best students do? What did we see the other students do? And so they give you some dot points. The first one is that the best outcomes read widely and have a variety of sources. So that means not relying on Wikipedia for 32 websites. That means interviews, surveys, observations, experiments, books, academic reports, blogs, use Reddit, go talk to your neighbor who possibly has some primary sources, get photographs, whatever it is, variety, that's what we want. Then you articulate what you discovered in your own words. It's not just, here's a quote, footnote, here's a quote, footnote, here's a quote, footnote. You actually explain your quotes, you explain your evidence, and you show that you've meaningfully engaged with that by actually answering your question, setting up your sources in a really strong way, and making sure that you have got all of your broad research integrating multiple perspectives for your appropriate argument, okay, and your audience. For substantiation, obviously, we're still using our referencing. Make sure you reference everything. But you're not just referencing. If you look at that third point there, you show a clear link between key ideas and sources. That's incredibly important. All right? You're not just saying Dr. X said blah. You're saying Dr. X, who is one of the leading researchers in underwater knitting and physicality, highlighted blah, blah, blah. Okay? Tell me why it's important. We have expression of ideas, and again, it's the articulation of findings, so it's not just grammar and punctuation. If you have subheadings or your questions in there because that makes it clearer, perfect. You got some graphs to show what your survey results were, and you've put a little caption and you've labeled the data and you've got your axes labeled appropriately, that is good. You've got diagrams that actually show the workflow of your ideas, perfect. Okay, so it's not just about being able to write a fancy sentence.